Hi guys, are you looking to upgrade your old corroded Malibu manual wedge to this shiny stainless steel floating wedge? If so, stay tuned and this video is going to show you everything you'll need to know. But first, let's watch a little surfing footage over at Lake Berryessa. The Malibu Wedge is a wake device that produces additional downforce on the back of the boat, and it's a perceived weight, so it feels as if you have an additional maybe 1,000 pounds inside the boat, even though you don't. And what's cool about it is with only a few clicks, you can turn it off or on without waiting for the ballast to fill. And using the wedge along with additional amount of ballast, even on an older boat, since this is a 2002 VLX, you can still produce a pretty significant surf wake with the combination of the wedge and the ballast, and also a wake shaper. So the reason we're doing this upgrade here is the old manual wedge, which is almost 19 years old, started to corrode pretty bad from being in the water. And also there's some design flaws where the screws on the bottom loosen up due to vibration, and it will end up pulling the foil off and bending those brass arms. And those brass arms are very expensive, somewhere between $150 to $250 each. So in order to deal with the corrosion and not deal with this brass arm bending anymore, we're going to go ahead and spend about $1,500 here, and we're going to upgrade to the newer all stainless steel floating wedge. And that means that it clicks in the up position, and then you unclick it and let it just slide down with gravity, and it will auto set its own position. So you don't need to click it into the down position like the manual wedge. And that is going to be a lot easier to deploy because the manual wedge is not the funnest thing to put up and down. And that's why in 2006, they started adding the power wedge. The power wedge uses electric actuators to put it in the up and down position, but that's only available on the newer boats. So we are not going to take it to that level, but we will be upgrading it to the floating style wedge. Okay, step one, supplies. I'll put a link in the description below for all of these things and where you can buy the floating wedge and all the hardware. So first thing you're gonna need is the foil, and that has the stainless steel arms on it. Second thing you'll need is a new bracket that goes to the boat because the old manual wedge one will not match up. And you probably already have a backing plate inside the boat, so you don't need a new backing plate. If you do, you can buy a new one online. I'll put a link below. And I would reuse the bolts and the washers for the hardware. If you want to replace them, just take one off, bring it to the hardware store, find a new suitable replacement. Okay, for tools, you're gonna want an impact driver, and I think it was a 3/4 inch socket. And then you'll also need something to hold the bolt inside the engine bay, so you'll need a crescent wrench or something to match up there. You'll also want to have some underwater adhesive sealant that's used in the boating industry to seal that water from entering the 4 bolt holes. Normally I use 3M, either a 4200 or 5200 series, but it's very expensive right now with the supply shortage. So I went with a Loctite version of that. It is designed to be used underwater, and you can pick it up easily at Home Depot for around $10. And you'll also need a second person at least to loosen the bolts on the original bracket and to retighten them. So plan to have a friend around for that part. You'll also want to have some type of adhesive remover or some alcohol to get off the old adhesive and clean up the gel coat transom area before you apply the new bracket. Okay, you'll probably want to remove your swim platform so you have easier access to get in here to work on the foil. And then you're going to remove the 2 bolts up top and take the foil off so you can start focusing on the bracket. Okay, now we can focus on the bracket. So here my wife and I are planning on which bolt to loosen first, and I'm gonna go inside, remove the engine bay and lay down. I'm gonna use a torque wrench because it's very long and a socket just to hold the backside of the bolt here. And she's gonna loosen them up one by one. All right, now we just need a little assistance to get the bracket off with a rubber mallet. That'll loosen up the old adhesive, and we should be able to slide it off without scratching any of the gel coat. Once the bracket's out of the way, we're gonna push those bolts back into the engine bay. Not completely, but at least maybe a ½ inch, because I'm gonna shove some new adhesive in there to help with the water tightness. So you'll see me move all 4 bolts. They're gonna have glue and adhesive on them, so it takes a little work to push them in. And here, put them in enough that you can get some adhesive inside that fiberglass area. You're gonna wanna clean off the old adhesive the best you can. You can buy some adhesive remover, and I'm using a plastic scraper so I don't scratch the gel coat. And then I like to follow it up with some isopropyl alcohol. That'll really help the new adhesive stick better to the gel coat. Okay, here we are with our 2 new parts. We have a new bracket and a new foil, and we're gonna unwrap those. So it's only 2 pieces here in your old hardware. It's actually very simple to replace this. Okay, now I'm gonna test fit the bracket, make sure all the holes line up before I apply any adhesive. And we can see that the original bolt holes match perfectly with the new bracket versus the old manual wedge. Here's a quick look at the original hardware if it helps anyone. These are the bolts that are in the transom, and we're gonna reuse them and remove this old adhesive so that it sticks better to the new stuff. So I'm gonna put a good amount of adhesive into each hole to try to get some penetration in the corners of that hole. And what ends up happening is when you push the bolt through, it's gonna push out majority of the adhesive, but there's still gonna be a small trace amount along the edges, which will help seal better. So once I push the bolts through, I'll just wipe them off again. And then I'm gonna use some additional adhesive on the exterior right along the crack line, and that will help with the water tightness here. But be sure to remove that additional adhesive on the bolt threads. You don't need all that on there. All right, now it's time to put the bracket in place. Everything matches up nicely. And then you'll want to call your friend over because now is the time to re-tighten up the washers and nuts. You don't want to over tighten this, but you do want it flush. So you could use an impact driver, just don't over tighten things. And I kind of went in a star pattern like you're changing your tires. So
Lower
up,
right.
down, left, right, back and forth until everything seemed very snug. Now we need to screw in the top 2 bolts, and that's going to hold the foil in place. And it's a little awkward to figure this out. It's a very tight fit, but just keep playing with it and it all works out. Now you want the final bolts here fairly tight, but not too tight that the entire device is hard to move up and down. So find a happy medium between loose and tight that the foil will go back into the up and down position easily. And it does have nylon nuts, so you should not worry about these loosening up and backing off on their own. Okay, there we go. That's the final product installed here. And it's currently in the floating position, and here's in the locked and up position when you're not using it or on the trailer. And you'll see that these pins are so much easier to use up and down. They're also much more secure and less likely to fall out. Also, there's no more brass arms to bend because everything is welded into place here. And just can't wait to get it back out on the water and try this new floating Malibu wedge. If you guys found this video helpful or useful, please give us a like and a subscribe. It really helps to support the channel, and we'll see you guys in the next video.